So those were the two regimental marches for the two main units involved in the Hong Kong, both the Canada's Royal Rifles of Canada and the Grenadiers. Welcome to today's ceremony commemorating the 75th anniversary of the victory in Japan and the liberation of Hong Kong veterans. I'm Master Warrant Officer Retired Jeff Alden, and I'll be your Master of Ceremonies. I'd also at this time like to welcome all those that are joining us on Facebook. Today we gather here to acknowledge Canada's contribution in the Pacific Coast. Locally, one of our units, the 111th Battery, was initially deployed to the Aleutian Islands to defend the West Coast. The Battle of Hong Kong is an official battle honor of both the Winnipeg Grenadiers and the Royal Rifles of Canada. We are here to recognize their services and sacrifice during the World War II. Canadians are not very familiar with Canada's participation in Hong Kong, so we're here to honor them. I would now like to invite Kira Gurney, great-granddaughter of Lieutenant Leonard Corrigan, to read the Far East Prisoner of War prayer. Okay, Cynthia's going to read in her place. You'll have to lean right in, Cynthia, because the microphone doesn't extend.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, this prayer is read prior to any meetings at the Hong Kong Veterans Commemorative Association. At the end of the prayer, if you would all reply, "We will remember them." And we that are left grow old with the years, remembering with heartache the pain and the tears, hoping and praying that never again man will sink to such sorrow and shame. The price that was paid we will always remember, every day, every month, not just in November. Would you all reply, "We will remember them"?
I would now call on Charlie Crow Chief, Blood Tribe Elder, to offer the Blackfoot Prayer.
Okay. I'm glad to be here to honor the veterans that have been captured for a few years. And I would like to express my feelings of freedom in Canada and all over the world. I know what the war is about when I heard about it, but it's very important that we're not at war at the present. But as I heard in the past, after the Second World War, there's another war coming, the Third World War. He said that's going to be the worst. And today, I feel this virus is around. We're fighting for it, against it around the world. We can't stop it unless we pull together and find a way to survive this virus. So I ask each and every one of you, I'll start the prayer and pray in your own word from your chest for peace of this virus. Not to hit us as bad as other places. We were fortunate enough to be out of the territory at this point. So I ask you, I'm going to start the prayer and pray in your own word to defend ourselves from this virus. We stand the wars. Now this virus is another one that's overcoming the world. All around the world are fighting this virus. So with that, I will start the prayer. Okay, napinatus. Ai, kita kata pens katsimata kendoksistikoi. Ai, kita ksinat satak. Adika kikana sakakapi. O kiamakskaki sa kapatomik sadikak e tsamem dakpia. E tamachanesko toya. O kendokaitsikstapi vantikanstapapi. Ai, o kimma tokinan. Anno tsitsiniwa spinanak. Akka nistayikoake. Sito taksipoja mokinan mohkistonnat saamik. Anne kaanista pens katsimat napinatus. Ai, noko siksaki itskina eik. Eikutseikista toksiawak, vakuktsikavoto sevokanman seikpi. So tamokane skanapi awak spikaaka tokmoka kanista pististus. O kanista kmana kaitapi wakak asitapiak pukaiksak. Alikuuta pisinok sakkoyak aksoktsissedaya. Akukkuikit saapi napinatus. Kestoa kitäätis katsimatak, heitä maaksisitse poistujuak, kitäätis katsimat sinapina tuusi. Kestoa näin kitapää puu tsifnuuk sakkoi. Aikimata kitkaa kukuu kitaakan staaps. Alekaan staapäätis katsimatakin napina tuusi. Akkuhan ei tumantissuskitsipissa tohmina ei koi. O naki taama eka mutakpina. Naki taamasteemis pinna ahitsa kaatoh pinna moki kuikkaak. O kanikaa kiissopukita piwa sinikaak äänskatsimattu. Aamuksi taapiksi taisukinäky. Ainakaan kiopukita piivak. Ainakaan kiopukaasin. Ahki taamohanaassa puas. Ainakaan kiaiksauksihka tuhpaak. Ainakaan kiissopukita piivasin. Ahsäätä piisini kamotaan.
I would now like to have everybody stand, please. We'll now play the national anthem. I'll now introduce our honored guest. Representing representing the Lethbridge MP Rachel Harder is her constituency manager Alicia Zodeman. Representing the Last Post Fund is Warrant Officer retired Glenn Miller. From the Alberta government, we have Associate Minister of Red Tape Grant Hunter and MLA from Cardston Siksika Joseph Scow. Lethbridge County Reeve, Lauren Hickey. Former members of the Blood Tribe Council, Charlie Fox and Lammer Fox. Former member, Headdress War Society. Representing the Polish Canadian Club is Anna Court and Tony Borishvitz. Colehurst Legion 273, Sergeant at Arms Brandon Graham and President Noel Burles. Lethbridge Legion President Michael Cormakin and Vice President Kyle Burns. Elder Charlie Crowchief. Miss Blackfoot Kai Reese, Mountain Horse. And Princess Emma, Mountain Horse. Kathy Carlson, daughter, and Kira Gurney, great-granddaughter of Lieutenant Leonard Corrigan. Cynthia Malison and family on behalf of Joe Mickelcow. Also at this time, I bring greetings, a message from the Honorable Lawrence Macaulay, Minister of Veterans Affairs and Associate Minister of National Defense. As we commemorate the 75th anniversary of Victory in Japan Day, I wish to express my sincerest thanks to the brave Canadians who served so selflessly in the Second World War. While most Canadians know of our nation's military efforts in the conflicts that took place in Europe and on the Atlantic Ocean, it is less well known that Canada also committed significant forces to struggle against Japan in Asia and the Pacific. In fact, by the time the war finally ended in 1945, more than 10,000 Canadians had taken part in the Allied efforts in the Asian theater. The defense of Hong Kong was particularly daunting, as nearly 800 of the 1,975 Canadian soldiers that were involved were killed or wounded in action. The survivors, enduring many years in harsh Japanese prisoner of war camps, with more than 260 of them losing their lives in captivity. Thousands of members of the Royal Canadian Air Force also served bravely in Asia, working as radar operators and flying with bomber, transport, reconnaissance, and fighter squadrons. For their part, the soldiers of the Royal Canadian Navy saw action against the Japanese on the dangerous waters of the Pacific Ocean. The 75th anniversary of VJ Day is a fitting time to remember their contributions in the service and to acknowledge the tremendous sacrifices they made so that we and others around the world can live in peace and freedom today. More than 1 million Canadians and Newfoundlanders served in the Second World War, and more than 45,000 gave their lives in the fight against tyranny and oppression. Though current circumstances prevent us from holding large-scale public ceremonies to pay them tribute, it remains our solemn duty to honor their service and remember their sacrifices. While we must express our gratitude differently in this difficult year, we do so with no less appreciation for their enormous and everlasting accomplishment, lest we forget. At this time, I'll call on Alicia Zodeman to bring greetings from MP Rachel Harder.
Thank you, everybody. Lean in. Yeah. Good morning, everyone. My name is Alicia, and I serve as the constituency manager for Member of Parliament Rachel Harder. Unfortunately, she is not able to join today as she is attending a wedding out of town. She was sad to miss this important commemoration. Please permit me to read her official greeting. Dear members of the Hong Kong Veterans Commemorative Association, though I am not able to join you in person, it is my honor to be with you in spirit as you commemorate the 75th anniversary of the liberation of Canadian soldiers who fought in the Battle of Hong Kong. More than 2,000 brave soldiers risked their lives by joining the Allies in the East to help defend Hong Kong. They chose to leave the safety of their home and fight against a tyranny that was threatening peace and human values on another continent. Though this legacy is one of struggle and hardship, it is evidence of the selfless spirit of Canadian men and women who are willing to endure extreme adversity for the benefit of others. We can never fully understand the trauma faced by the Canadian soldiers who were captured and interned in the Japanese prisoner of war camps for more than 3.5 years under horrendous conditions, but we will never forget the sacrifices they made and the bravery they showed. Today, we honor the lives that were lost in the Battle of Hong Kong, and we remember the liberation of our Canadian veterans, lest we forget. Thank you.
Next, I'll call up Glenn Miller to bring greetings from Last Post Fund.
Good morning, Oki. I'm honored to participate in today's commemorative event. I wish to offer my greetings to the veterans who are watching online and to those who are present. Over 1 million Canadians and Newfoundlanders fought in World War II. They left their families, loved ones, friends, and peaceful surroundings. They did not know when they were coming back or if they were coming back. May 8 marked the end of victory in Europe for the Second World War. But the Second World War was still not won. 3 months later, through the bravery and sacrifice they required before the war was required to come to an end, some of these men and women remained in the military. Some would later participate in Korea or go on to serve as peacekeepers. We can never repay them for their sacrifice, but we can honor those veterans and merchant marines who defended the freedom in Canada we enjoy by remembering. 3 simple words, lest we forget. Words that have meanings by our actions today. We must take the time and efforts to remember, to demonstrate our appreciation and show our respect to those who defended our freedoms. We pause today for our daily lives to recognize their sacrifice, and commitment. Today, our children simply take for granted freedoms that exist in Canada. These were earned and must continue to be earned. To those in uniform today, at home and abroad, on the world stage, we say thank you. It is the responsibility and duty as citizens to educate our children of that price then and now. For those who died, some were buried where they fell or commemorated on monuments who have no known graves. Canada records all of their names in the books of remembrance, forever to be viewed daily by the visitors to the Peace Tower in Parliament as a reminder of their sacrifice. There is nothing more important than a person's name. I ask for your help to honor those veterans who have passed but do not have their names recorded with a permanent marker at their final resting place. If you know of a veteran who does not have a permanent marker, to please contact the Last Post Fund so these members can be honored and remembered for future generations, lest we forget.
Now from the Alberta Government, Associate Minister Grant Hunter, Tabor Warner.
Good morning, and it's a pleasure to be here with you today and bring greetings on behalf of the Government of Alberta and Premier Jason Kenney. Thank you all for coming out and taking time out of your busy Saturdays to commemorate this significant day, the 75th anniversary of the liberation of the Canadian soldiers in Hong Kong. We're blessed to live in a country where we feel safe and where we are safe. This is why it is so important to remember how we got there, how we got here, and reflect on the stories and the people who played an important role in our history as a country. We should never take what we have for granted. You know, it is important to remember that freedom isn't free. There's a great cost to freedom, and that cost was borne by our soldiers, our brave soldiers of the past. These last months, we've been given a clear reminder that during times of crisis, we can and will come together. And that's not to compare COVID-19 to war, but it is to say that it is human nature to do what we can and whatever it takes to protect our neighbors, our friends, and our family. That's exactly what 1,975 soldiers, Canadian soldiers, did back in 1941. They volunteered to fight for Canada, and that came at a human cost. Many were young, many were inexperienced, but were full of passion for freedom and security for their families. Approximately 290 were killed in a battle, and while in captivity, approximately 264 more died as prisoners of war, with a total death toll of 554. The surviving prisoners of war were liberated 4 years on this day at this same time, August 15th, 1945 at 11 a.m. Against overwhelming odds, these soldiers fought on and faced being killed or captured out of love for their country, their families, and for all of us. I cannot imagine how they must have felt as they walked out of that, the camps and were told that they were going to be going home, lest we forget.
Also from the Alberta Government, MLA Joseph Scow, Cardston, Siksika. Oh, apparently he's dealing with an accident. What an MLA. From the County of Lethbridge, Lorne Hickey will bring greetings from the county.
Okay. Thank you and good morning, everyone. I'm honored to be here today to bring greetings on behalf of Lethbridge County and all municipalities in Alberta. As we mark the 75th anniversary of VJ Day and the liberation of Canadian soldiers who fought in the Battle of Hong Kong, let us reflect on the sacrifices these brave soldiers made for the freedom that we enjoy today. And after looking at those pictures in your pamphlet, I can't believe the conditions the prisoners of war lived in. It is important to remember not only the battles that were fought, but also the terrible conditions, as I mentioned, the prisoners of war faced. For those who survived the war and were able to return home, those effects of being a prisoner of war have lasted forever. So let us remember these sacrifices and do our part to ensure that they are not forgotten for their bravery. Thank you.
I will now read out the National Hong Kong Veterans President's message. As one of the 5 remaining Hong Kong veterans, George Peterson, George McDonald, Hormidas Fredette, 103 years old, Eugene Lapointe, and myself, I am proud and honored to express a few words to remember VJ Day, the day the world began again for us, fortunate few. My best wishes to the Hong Kong Veterans Commemorative Association for a continued success. Many thanks for the never-ending devotion to its members. I am truly grateful. À la prochaine. See you next time. Phil Dudridge. I will now call on Kathy Carlson, who will now give us a brief history of the Battle of Hong Kong.
Good morning, everyone. I personally am so grateful that all of you took time out in your day to come and join us and to learn a little bit more and to honor the many soldiers that served in the World War II in the Battle of Hong Kong. It's my role to share with you a little bit of the history, sort of tell a story about kind of how this all happened, and I'm delighted to do that. Can you hear me? In September of 1941, the Government of Canada responded to a request from Prime Minister Churchill in Great Britain to send troops to help defend the British Crown colony of Hong Kong. Canada dispatched 1,975 largely untrained soldiers from Sea Force of the Royal Rifles and the Winnipeg Grenadiers to Hong Kong. The Royal Rifles were a bilingual unit from Quebec City, and the Winnipeg Grenadiers represented the western areas of Canada. Their mission was to bolster the outpost garrison, non-combat duty, already there. In Hong Kong, the Mainland Brigade consisted of 2 British units, the Hong Kong Regiment, and 2 Indian Army units. The brigade was to provide a military deterrent against the Japanese and to reassure Chinese leader Chiang Kai-shek that Britain was genuinely interested in defending the colony, which at some point was expecting an attack by the Japanese Imperial Army. The Japanese had been fighting in China before 1937, and by 1941 had effectively surrounded Hong Kong. The colony was strategically important to Britain, as it lay directly on the shipping routes for oil and other war materials between Japan and sources in Southeast Asia. The reinforcement of more troops was made to hopefully deter or possibly delay the Japanese from attacking. On October 27, 1941, 1,975 Canadian troops left Vancouver, Canada, and set sail for the Far East aboard the ship Awatea, escorted by the armed merchant ship HMCS Prince Robert. They arrived in Kowloon, Hong Kong on November 16, 1941, without proper uniforms and equipment, as supplies that were sent separately ended up being rerouted to Manila. Upon arrival, the Canadian troops began training and prepared for active duty and the garrison routine. It was not known when the Japanese would attack. A period of only 3 weeks lapsed from the time the Canadians landed in Hong Kong after a 3-week sea voyage until the Japanese attacked from mainland China. At 8 a.m. on December 8, 1941, simultaneously with the December 7th attack on Pearl Harbor, which is on the other side of the international date line, the Japanese army suddenly struck. Their bombers obliterated the Kai Tak Airport and Royal Air Force planes, and Japanese soldiers began to march overland from China into Hong Kong. The Japanese had over 50,000 seasoned troops, well outnumbering the British garrison of about 14,000 men. The Japanese were battle-hardened and equipped, well-equipped, while the defenders were very short of equipment and had no means of resupply. The battle raged for 17 days. Many defenders were killed, including nearly 300 Canadians, during fighting that took place in the mountainous and extremely difficult terrain of Hong Kong. Finding themselves exhausted without reinforcements, food, water, and ammunition, the battered Allies had no choice but to surrender. Finally, on December 25th, 1941, although the troops were willing to carry on the fight, the British governor of Hong Kong surrendered to Japan. The defenders who survived the battle were taken prisoner and spent the remainder of the war as prisoners of war in Hong Kong and Japan. The Japanese army had made no preparation for feeding and housing the POWs. The prisoners were subjected to brutal and inhumane conditions. The prisoners were forced slave laborers to the enemy, living and working in dangerous conditions in mines, shipyards, Tai Kek Airport, and other war-related industrial sectors. Nearly 267 more Canadians died in the POW camps in Hong Kong and work camps in Japan. During their 3 years and 10 months of captivity, many of those who survived the battle had to live with physical and emotional abuse, lack of clothing under winter conditions in Japan, vermin-infested food and living conditions, medical conditions, and inadequate medical aid. They contracted over 14 tropical diseases related to their ill treatment, lack of food, and malnutrition, subsisting on 800 calories a day, and men, my father included, lost 60 to 80 pounds. We understand the POWs who were forced to build airport runways in Hong Kong attempted to sabotage their work by contaminating the materials needed to harden the tarmac and runways. When the first Japanese planes landed on the new runways, their wheels sunk into the faulty concrete and were out of commission. Others did their utmost to sabotage the Japanese war efforts elsewhere, including Japan. Following the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki on August 6th and 9th, 1945, the prisoners of war were liberated by an American landing party on August 15th at 11 a.m. as all the Japanese guards had laid down their arms and disappeared from the camps throughout the night. The official Japanese surrender was signed in Tokyo on September 2nd, 1945. The sudden end of the war prevented the execution of Japanese orders to kill all the POWs. In the worldwide quest for peace and freedom, our Canadians were the first to be engaged in World War II in the Pacific and the last soldiers to be liberated. Of the 1,975 Canadians who were sent to Hong Kong, more than 1,005 men were either killed or wounded. The freed Canadian prisoners of war were sent to Manila for over a month to treat their illnesses and fatten them up so they could survive the journey home. Of the 1,975 men who sailed to Hong Kong in 1941, more than 550 would never see Canada again. When they arrived by ship to Canada, they were put on trains and sent home to get on with their lives. Many returned confronting many health and life challenges. 1 year ago, we met David Vidlin in Calgary, who was 20 years old in 1945 and was living in Victoria. He volunteered to be in the landing party of an American ship whose mission was to retrieve the liberated Canadian POWs and bring them home. He said that when the 60-strong rescue team marched up to the POW camp fence in their white uniforms, the Canadians in their weakened state were momentarily confused as to who they were and remarked in awe that they looked like angels. If you look on your program in the back, you'll see a lot of the vets, the soldiers, and there's a fellow in a white Navy uniform. And that glare of that's what he said. Our association, the Hong Kong Veterans Commemorative Association, with approximately 550 members today across Canada, consists largely of 5 veterans, 85 widows, and the sons and daughters of our veterans. It helps to ensure that this chapter of Canada's military history is never forgotten, lest we forget. The flag you see before you, with these 2 beautiful gals, is one of the original flags designed in 1947 when the veterans first started to get together in comradeship. You can see it is uncomplicated, with the word Hong Kong above and veterans below. When the last Hong Kong veteran passes on, I understand this flag will be retired. I have it in my possession, as we recently lost our last Alberta veteran at 98, who lived in Calgary, and when a service is possible, we will fly the flag with pride in his honor. Thank you for joining us today, and a huge thanks to Glenn Miller and the General Stewart Legion Branch Number 4 for partnering with HKVCA in the planning and presentation of this ceremony. Thank you. Thank you, gals.
At this time, I'd ask that everybody that can stand, please stand for last post, followed by a minute of silence. The Bridge City Highlanders will now play Battle is O'er. I will now play the Act of Remembrance, Hong Kong.
And we that are left grow old with the years, remembering the heartache, the pain, and the tears, hoping and praying that never again man will sink to such sorrow and shame. The price that was paid we will always remember, every day, every month, not just in November. We will remember them.
We will remember them. I would ask that you please remain standing. Those that are invited, for those that are laying wreaths, to please make your way over to this area. We'll now, the drum group, Moccasin Flats from the Blood Tribe, will now perform an honor song. Please remain standing. Ready? Okay, we will now commence with laying of wreaths. Last post fund, Warrant Officer retired Glenn Miller will lay a wreath. Yeah, you may be seated. On behalf of the Member of Parliament for Lethbridge, Alicia Zodeman. On behalf of the Alberta Government, Associate Minister Grant Hunter and MLA Joseph Scow. Glenn? Glenn? Michael, need to read too, right? Oh, that's mine at the end. So we need one more read. On behalf of the County of Lethbridge, Reeve Lauren Hickey. On behalf of the Korea Veterans Association, Gordon Brown. They're going to do Scotland the Brave. On behalf of the Royal Canadian Legion General Stewart Branch, President Michael Cormican. The Hong Kong Veterans Commemorative Association, Kathy Carlson and daughter, and Kira Gurney, great-granddaughter of Lieutenant Leonard Corrigan, Winnipeg Grenadiers. Also, Cynthia Melanson and Tara on behalf of Joe Mikelkow, Winnipeg Grenadiers. And myself, Jeff Alden, in memory of my Uncle Arthur of the Royal Rifles of Canada.
and for the royalty from the Blood Tribe, Miss Blackfoot Canada, and the Princess are the great-granddaughters of a warrior from the Mountain Horse family that had 3 brothers join.
I'd ask that you please stand. Moccasin Flats Drum Group will now perform another honor song. May be seated. The Highland Pipers will now play Scotland the Brave. The organizers would like to thank those who traveled here today and those who have joined us to participate, as well as the viewers that have joined us on Facebook to honor our veterans. To learn more, you are invited to explore the new digital display online from the Canada War Museum at War Against Japan, 1941 to 1945. It's a testament to the background and the heritage of this country and its warriors and its war veterans. Presented the music here today, both the music from the Bridge City Highlanders as well as Moxon Flat Drum Band. A special mention and thank you to the City of Lethbridge and area cemetery staff for their continued full support in providing care for the final resting places of our veterans and their spouses. This concludes the ceremony for today, and we invite you to join us at the Lethbridge Legion to enjoy some comradeship following here closing. Thank you very much.